Hello, Miguel from Grumo here, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create an AI-powered chat assistant using Glide from scratch. Here we have the final application, and in this case we have 3 private chats, and we can click on any of those chats and see how the bot replied to my inquiry. In order to get these responses, we are using Glide's OpenAI integration, which you can set up under Settings, Integrations, and then under OpenAI, you would enter your OpenAI API key, which you can find under platform.openai.com/API-keys. Then you go to create new secret key. Then you would copy it and paste it under your OpenAI integration API key box right here. Once you have that, you can start creating your AI chat bot. Let's just give it a try right here. We're going to create a new chat and we're going to say, why is Glide apps so awesome as a no-code platform? Press enter, wait a little bit, and here's the result. Glide apps is often considered awesome as a no-code platform for several reasons. Easy to use, Google Sheets integration, customizable templates, mobile-friendly, real-time updates, multiple features, cost-effective. There you go. Now, you can program your chat assistant to have any kind of personality by deciding under the action that determines, in this case, complete chat with history, and the prompt, which now we're saving under settings, this prompt. In this case, I'm saying you are a professional IT person and will help me troubleshoot tech problems. Always ask clarifying questions. Now you can customize this prompt to tailor the responses of your AI assistant for your specific needs. All right, now let's create this AI chatbot from scratch. So what we're going to do is create a new project, blank project inside Glide, and you're gonna get 3 tables by default, which we can delete the tables, items, and categories. And then we're left with a users table. Now we're going to create a table where we're going to store our AI chatbot settings. So click the plus button here, blank table. We're gonna name this settings, and this is going to be the name of our bot. Let's call it bot. And we're going to add a few more columns. One's gonna be an email column of the email type, of course, and we're gonna call this, it could be any email. I'm just gonna say bot@email.com. Then we're gonna give it a little avatar photo of the image type. We're going to upload a photo, and it's going to be this icon of a AI chat bot. And then we're going to add a text column, which we're gonna call prompt, and we're gonna enter this prompt. You are an IT professional person and will help me troubleshoot tech problems. Always ask clarifying questions if necessary. Of course, you can change this to whatever you want the personality of your AI chatbot to have, okay? Now we're going to create a chats table where we're gonna store our different chats, and we're going to add a row ID. We're going to rename this to chat ID because we're going to generate a unique chat ID in order for the logic to work. I click save. I'm going to also add a timestamp column of the type date. We can also have seconds here if you want to. Perfect. Let's move that there. Now we are going to associate each chat with each user in order to make them private. So for that, we're gonna have a user ID column, type email, okay? And our last table is going to be called messages. And I'm gonna add a little arrow here because that messages table is gonna be related to the chats table. So messages, and here you have to have a very specific set of columns in order for the chat to work with the native chat component that comes with Glide. So the first thing we're going to do is add a timestamp column. We're going to edit this and call this timestamp, date and time. Perfect. We're also going to store the session ID. This is how Glide's OpenAI integration differentiates between different chats, because it's going to look at the previous messages in order to have a context of the overall conversation and to know what the conversation was about. Each message has to be tagged with the same session ID. Okay? Now, another column called content. This is the actual messages that we're sending to the bot. And we're going to have a result column of the text type where we are going to store the responses that come back from the OpenAI integration. Now, we also have to differentiate who is sending the message. So in this case, we need a role column. And the values are going to be either user or assistant. User is the person that is currently logged in using the chat, and assistant is where we're going to write when we get the response back from OpenAI. Now we're going to add an email column where we're going to store the email address of the individuals that are part of this conversation, which in this case is just going to be the person chatting and the bot. The bot does need to have an email in order for the chat component to differentiate between sender and receiver. I'm going to show how this works in a little bit. So this is going to be an email column, email type, save. I'm also going to add a receiver's ID column, okay, which is also going to be an email type column. And this is required if you want the chat messages to be only accessible to the currently logged in user, the chat messages that belong to that user's conversation. Otherwise, Glide will download the database for all the chats for all the users. Now, they won't be visible on the front end on the application, but they will be actually downloaded on the background. So for security reasons, we're going to make sure that we add both the email and the receiver's email address, because then we're going to use what is called row owners, and this is going to prevent from downloading messages that don't belong to the currently logged in user. Okay? Now let's go back to our chats table. We're going to add another column. It's going to be a relation column. We're going to call it messages rel for relation, where we're going to relate. Let me just type relation here. Relation. We're going to relate the chat ID of the current chat with the chat ID or the session ID. We're going to call it session ID in this case, under the session ID column inside the messages table, right? And that's going to be a match multiple. And we're going to use this in order to just show the messages that belong to each unique chat. Now we are pretty much done with the backend, the data aspect of this app. We can start working on the layout, on how the app is going to look like. So we click on layout and we can start from scratch. Let's just delete these two screens right here. And we're going to add the main screen by clicking the plus button. And we're going to say screen from data. And in this case, we're going to use the chats as the data. Okay. Now we can select this collection, which is already connected to the chats table. And we're going to make this into a list type of collection. The title is going to be, let's just make this blank. The description is going to be the timestamp, because we're going to generate the title of each chat automatically also using AI. But for that, we need to have some chats created. And I'm going to show you how to do that also as well, which is going to be really cool. We don't need an image, so I can change that to blank. Great. So now we're going to create our first custom action, which is the creation of a chat by clicking this plus button here. So to modify the default action that we have here, we need to select the collection that we have here, this collection component associated with the chats table. And we're going to then go to actions, and we're going to disable these actions and go to enable advanced actions. And then we're going to add a primary action. It's going to be a custom action. And for that, we click the add primary action, and then we click on it, and we're going to go change this from the default show notification action to a custom action, we go here under actions for chats and create new action. We're going to call this chat new. Okay, and now we can create our custom action. In this custom action, we're going to do two things. We're going to generate a unique identifier for this chat, and then we're going to redirect the user to the newly created chat. Okay, now where we're going to store this unique identifier is going to be inside the currently logged in users row, because that row is available to all the tables by default. So we're going to go to data users, and we need to add a new column, which is going to be called chat ID of type text, and it's going to be user specific. Okay, and then click save. Perfect. Now we can store the unique identifier that we're going to create by selecting a set action, set column values, and we're going to select now the user profile row. As you can see, it's available from all the actions by default. So we're going to click user profile row, and now we can write to the newly created chat ID column and insert a unique identifier, which we're going to use to differentiate between chats. Once we've created that, we can go ahead and add a new chat row under the chats table. So we're going to start typing add, then click on data add row. We're going to add this under the chats table, correct? And the timestamp is going to be the current date and time. The chat ID is the unique identifier that we created under the user profile, which is stored under the chat ID column. And then the user ID is going to be the email of the currently logged in user, which is always available under actions here under the app's user email. Now, once we've done that, we want to redirect the user to the newly created chat. And to do that, we have to go back to the users table and create a relation between this current user using the chat ID as the reference to the chat ID inside the chats table. How do we do this? Is by creating a relation table. It's going to be called chat rel, and we're going to start typing rel for relation, and then we're going to relate the chat ID column where we're storing that unique identifier, and then we're going to relate it under the chats table to the corresponding chat ID column. Okay. Once we do this, we can do a little trick under the actions again, under the chat new action, where after creating that new chat row, we can redirect the user. So we're going to go start typing detail and navigation show detail screen of not this item, but under the user profile, that new relation that we created to the new chat that we just created. Okay. And now this should work. We go to layout and we click go. It says go here, but let's just change that to something else. Let's say new, and we're going to have a little plus icon here. So when we create new, again, what's going to happen? Let's go to actions. This is what's going to happen. We're going to create a unique identifier that we're going to store under the chat ID column inside the currently logged in users row. Then we're going to create a new row under the tables, under the chats table, where we're going to use that newly created unique identifier for that chat ID. Then we're going to redirect the user to that chat's detail screen by using the relation that we created under the users table to that chat. So let's try it out. Create new, and we've been redirected to that chat. Let's see what has happened in the background. You can see a new row has been added. I can delete the first one because that was just created by default here. And what we have here is everything that I was looking for, right? We have the timestamp, the unique identifier, which as you can see starts by 747. If we go to users, that unique identifier was created first here. That created a relation that we used to take us to that specific row detail page. And then to differentiate which chats belong to which user, we added a user ID column that is using the currently logged in user's email address. Now we can change this column and make it make row owner, which is going to ensure that when we go here to layout under chats, we only see the chats that belong to the currently logged in user. Right, so you can see that the new chat was created. We can click on that chat, but we don't see anything useful here because we actually have to create the chat interface. We have the data structure for the messages and the chats, as you can see here, but now we have to plug all this in on the interface. So what we're going to do is delete everything, and now we're going to add a new component. It's going to be called comments component, and that's a default Glide component that allows you to create chat interfaces. So you can see the source has already been automatically related to the messages table, which is what we wanted. But now we have to fill in all these different settings here. The first one is where are we going to save the text that is being sent by the user interacting with the bot. And that's going to be saved under the content column. All right. Then we're going to change this from the default comment style to the chat style, which is going to differentiate between the sender and the receiver on the interface. Otherwise, all the messages are going to look the same. So we switch that to that. But in order to differentiate between who is sending and receiving the emails, there's a new author email setting here where we're going to bind the author email to distinguish the message bubbles. Okay. And in this case, we can use the email here, right? This is where we're storing the sender's email, okay? Great. Next, under the display data, the text that we're going to display is the actual message, so we're going to grab that from the content. The timestamp is the timestamp, that's correct. The author photo, we don't have it yet, so we have to pull the author's photo into the messages table in order to be able to grab that and display it on the chat. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to go do the messages table, and we have to grab the photo of the person sending the message. So the first thing we're going to do is create a relation to the users table and relation type, where we're going to relate the email of the sender with the email inside the users table. Okay. Once we do that, we can look up the user's photo and name. So user name, and that's going to be a lookup column. And we're going to use the newly created relation to the user table to grab the name of the user, and then user photo, the same thing, a lookup column, and we're going to grab the photo. Okay, so when we go back to the layout, we can change the author photo setting here to the user photo, and here we can do the same thing for the name. Perfect. Now, under the save data section, we need to save a timestamp, which is going to be the current date and time. The session ID is going to come from the user profile chat ID. And we're going to set this every time we click on a chat, right? Remember that the way that we're differentiating chats is by that chat ID. And in this case, we have to store that unique identifier under the session ID for the OpenAI integration to be able to know what messages belong to which chat, okay? Then the result, this is where what's going to be written by the chat response, okay, which we're going to set up on a custom action next. The role is going to be user, and this is specific to using the action called chat with history, where I'm going to show you next. And there's two roles. One is user, which is the human that is sending the messages, and assistant is the other role name that has to be exactly written as user and as assistant in order for this to work. And for the email, we're going to use the app's user email. So the currently logged in user's email is going to be saved under email. And for receiver, we're going to set that in a moment. All right, now this is when things start getting very interesting, because this is where we're going to plug in the magic of the AI chatbot. So what we need to do is, when we submit that message, we have to send this message through the OpenAI integration and then store the result that we get back from it. Because if we write something here right now, well, we're not even seeing anything. And let's see why we're not seeing anything. We'll here under messages, there is no session ID saved there, because maybe there was no session ID. Yeah, there's no chat ID here saved, right? We have to create a click action that when we click on a chat, it saves that chat ID in the users table, and then we can use that to identify each chat independently. We can do that right now real quickly by creating a new action. So to do that, we click on the chats collection here, and then under actions, we have to modify the item click action. So we're going to modify it to a new action, and we're going to call this chat view. And the first thing we need to do, well, we can leave that on, but we're going to set the user profile row chat ID with the chat ID, the current chat ID. We're going to put that first, okay? And now we've saved that unique identifier for that chat, which then we can use to identify the messages that are being sent by that user, okay? So it looks like we haven't done anything here, but if we go to data under users, you can see that now we saved the chat ID that corresponds to the chat that we're viewing right now, this one. Once we do that, when I type a message here, it should appear. As you can see, it appears. But we're not getting any responses because we haven't hooked this with our OpenAI integration yet. To do that, let's select the comments component here, and then here under submit action is where we're going to create a new action. And this is where we're going to go and say chat send message. And now we're going to modify this to a OpenAI action, which is called complete chat with history. Okay. Now, in order to use this, we have to enter our OpenAI key, which we can find by creating an account under platform.openai.com and then go to API keys. Then you create a new key. I'm going to call this chat, create new secret key, and I'm going to copy it. And then I can go back to my application here, click add OpenAI, paste it, click done. And now we've connected with our OpenAI account using our OpenAI API key, okay? You need to do that in order to be able to use this integration. Now, we're gonna set up this step by step. The first thing is the message history, is where are all the messages stored that have the same session ID, okay? And in this case, it's under the messages table, okay? The prompt for the system is the instructions we're giving OpenAI to respond to our inquiries or to our messages. The message is under content. This is the message that was sent by the user. The session ID is stored under the session ID. The model, we can use GPT-4. And if, eventually it'll be 5, 6, whatever, you will change that, the latest model. The result is going to be stored under the result column. Under model tweaks, I would increase the maximum length to, let's say, 496. So we have more detail or longer responses. But there's a couple of things that are missing here. And one is the prompt system, right? And as you may remember, we had that stored under settings. So we need to grab this prompt and pull it into our messages table so we can use it in our custom action. And to do that, we're going to create a new column here, which is going to be called bot prompt. And I'm going to group anything related to the bot under a little folder here called bot. Okay. And we're going to use the single value column and grab the first value from settings prompt. Okay. So now we pulled in this row, and this, in this case, this specific column called prompt under the this column. And now we can use it in our custom action here under send message. We go back to our OpenAI custom action here, and we can now find that prompt here under bot prompt. Okay, great. So now we're done with the complete chat OpenAI custom action, but we are storing the result under the same row as the message was sent. So in order for this to appear like it was sent by another user, in this case, the OpenAI chatbot, we have to create a new row under the messages table. So we're going to start typing at row, and then we're going to write under the messages table. That's correct. The timestamp is going to be the current date and time. The session ID is the session ID of this current chat, which we store under the user's profile chat ID. The content in this case is going to be the result, right, that we stored previously. And in this case, we don't need the result because we're pretending that this message was sent by the bot. That message was stored under the result column. And then the row, this is very important. This has to be exactly written like this, assistant. And the email is what we need in order to differentiate between the sender and the receiver. Now, the email is stored under settings. We could, write the actual email, any email, as long as it's not an email of an existing user, right? And the receiver's ID is the email of the receiver, which is the app's user email. So the person that is logged in is the person that is receiving, in this case, the message, right? Now, where did we store the bot's email? It's also under settings here, email. So we will have to pull that also from the bots table here. Let's duplicate that and call this email. And now we're going to grab, instead of the prompt, we're going to grab the email. Okay. And if we go to actions and send message at row, we're going to grab the email from bot email. Great. So in theory, this should start working already. It should be working already. Okay. We're going to have to do a couple of tweaks in order to make sure it works. So what I'm going to do is start from scratch. Okay. I'm going to delete all the messages, and I'm going to delete this chat. And let's pretend we're going to have our first conversation here, our first little chat with OpenAI. Okay, so I click new. That takes me to a new chat, and I can say, why Glide Apps is so awesome as a no-code platform. Click send, and boom, we did get an answer from OpenAI. How cool is that? And we can keep talking, and actually it's going to remember the previous messages because they are all related with the same session ID. If we go here, we can see under messages that there's two messages, the message that I sent and the message I received. They both have the same session ID, right? This is how you can keep the same context during a conversation, right? Now, if I were to create a new chat, right? Let's just go to chats here, okay? And create new, I would start a new conversation. What is the best 24-inch monitor for PC? And here's the answer. Many suitable options exist, blah, blah, blah. Dell Alienware AW3420DW. You get some recommendations. Anyways, this is working, and you can see the chats are unique, right? And now we can do some more cosmetic changes, but basically this is everything that you need to know in order to create a custom AI chatbot inside Glide. Now we're just going to finalize a little bit of the look. For example, we're not seeing the bot's image here, the avatar icon. Go under data settings, you can see that that photo should be appearing. It's not appearing. That is because we're not pulling that photo from the settings table at this moment. We are pulling the currently logged in user's photo, but we have no photo for the bot. And for that, we're going to duplicate one of these columns where we're pulling data from the settings table. And this is going to be bot photo. We're going to grab the bot photo. and also the bot image. So we're going to duplicate this, and that's going to be, sorry, the bot name, because the name wasn't appearing either, right? So we're going to go settings name, okay? Now we have to create two conditional columns, one for the name and one for the photo. So if the reply is coming from the bot, we actually grab the bot's image. So for that, we're just going to add a new column. It's going to be called name if, and it's going to be of if then else type column. We're going to say that if the email, right, is the bot's email, that means that the message came from the bot, then we're going to show the bot's name, the bot's name. Otherwise, we're going to use the username, so the actual human, right? And we're going to duplicate this for the photo, call this photo if, and again, if the email that was stored is from the bot and it matches the bot's email, then we're going to grab the bot's photo. Otherwise, we're going to use the user's photo, okay? Now we have to go to our layout and wire this. So we're under the display data, we're grabbing the conditional columns, which are going to be photo if and name if. As you can see now, we're having the right name bot and the right AI chat photo. Something that we can do as well now is that we're not storing the receiver's ID, which should be the email of the bot, and it's not available on the chat stable. So we have to pull that into the chat stable, also creating a, so I'm going to call this bot email using a single value column, get the first row from the settings email. And now we can go back to our layout, click on the comments component, and under the receiver's ID, we can have select that as the email. Now I want to ensure that only the messages that belong to this user get downloaded, right? So we went to the chats table here and we added a make row owner setting here under the user's ID column, which needs to be an email type in order to work in this case. And that way only these these chat rows will be downloaded to that user's device. But for messages, we don't have that enabled yet. So what we have to do is for both the email and the receiver, we have to do the same thing, make row owner and make row owner. And that way we ensure only these users' messages get downloaded to their device. And let's just do a little more cosmetic stuff. Instead of comments, we're going to call this chat. Okay. And we're going to add a little settings screen here. And we're going to change the icon to a cogwheel. And we're going to delete that. And this is just a screen so we can set the parameters for the bot itself. So we can add a profile title component, and that's already grabbing the right things. Under subtitle, we could say maybe the email, and then we can add a text entry component and make sure that we have a little placeholder saying enter the prompt for this bot. Or actually we could just, I mean, this is just cosmetic again. All right, so if there was nothing here written, at least you would see something, right? Like an example. Okay, and maybe an edit button. So under actions, we just go edit and just an edit screen overlay. That way you can change the name and the email. Right, so the bot email, make it require, the name require, and also an image so we can change the avatar for this bot, right? And edit form, options, edit bot, for example. There you go. Bam. Just one more thing that I think is really cool. So if we go here to chats, we can see that we don't have any titles for the chats, but we can use some AI magic to automatically generate these titles, the same way that happens on the official ChatGPT app, right? So how do we do that? We need to go to the chats table and we're going to pull all the messages for each chat. For that, we're going to create a messages R as an array. We're going to do a lookup column for the message relation, for the actual content. This is where we're storing the actual messages. If we click here, we can see that all the messages are there. Now we're going to convert this into a string, messages, st for string, and we're going to join all these messages from that array, okay? And we can separate them with, I don't know, an enter. And that way we can see now all the messages for each conversation. Now we're gonna truncate it because maybe we have a very long conversation. So what we wanna do here is messages truncated, and we're gonna truncate that string, that very long string, and we're gonna say maybe 1,000 characters. Okay, we're truncating the length of the messages because we're going to send this to OpenAI via the native Glide OpenAI integration, not the one where we added an API key, but the one that already comes with Glide, to create a topic, okay? And that's going to be, if you go under AI generate text, we're going to say under the instructions, summarize the following conversation in 4 words or less. The input is going to be the actual truncated message list there. We're going to use the default model, but see what's happening already automatically. We have a little summary. Now that one has a list, so you gotta play with the prompt and say, for example, don't use bullet points, just one sentence. Let's see if that works. Glide apps. Okay, perfect. So now we can use that topic in our layout under the collections component, and for the title, we're gonna select the topic. And guess what? We get a title that is automatically generated based on the conversation for each of our chats. How cool is that? So there you go. This is a fully functional chat app that interacts with OpenAI, and you can create your custom assistants, give them the personality that you need to. Super cool, all done with Glide without coding. If you want a copy of this template, just go to grumo.com/AI chat. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.